I'm Lana. I've been the woman of the house since I was 12, when Mom passed. Dad did his best, but with little Jack needing so much, I stepped up big time. I never made it to college. Money was always tight, and dreams had to wait. Instead, I dove headfirst into work straight out of high school, landing a gig at a small ad agency. Jack's the brainy one, clever as they come. I scrimped and saved every dime I could to get him through college. He graduated top of his class, landed a job at some fancy trading company, and shot up the ranks like a rocket. Tonight, though, wasn't about Jack or bills or work. Tonight was about letting loose for once. My best friend, Mia, dragged me out to this swanky party downtown, said I needed to unplug and unwind. So here I was, squeezed into a dress I last wore when I thought low-rise jeans were a good idea, nursing a drink and feeling out of place among the glittering crowd. Mia was off mingling, leaving me leaning against a wall, scanning the room. That's when I saw him, Lucas. He stood out, not just because he was ridiculously handsome, with that annoyingly perfect hair, but because he laughed like he meant it, eyes crinkling, head thrown back. Way out of my league, right? But life's funny sometimes. He caught me staring, smiled, and walked over. My heart did a weird flip. "Hi, I'm Lucas. I couldn't help but notice you from across the room," he said, voice smooth like he practiced it. I blinked, words stuck somewhere between my brain and my mouth. Lana. Hi. Enjoying the party, Lana?" His eyes twinkled with genuine curiosity, not the bored politeness you'd expect at these things. "Ah, it's all right. Not really my scene, you know? Too many ties and high heels," I muttered, feeling my cheeks heat up. He laughed, and it was like a warm blanket on a cold night. "I hear you. I'm about ready to ditch the tie myself." "So, what do you do when you're not critiquing fashion choices at fancy parties?" "Advertising. Well, more like wrangling ads and hoping people click on M more than they ignore M," I said, warming up to his easy demeanor. "Sounds like a challenge. I'm in software myself. And speaking of challenges, how about we challenge each other to a dance? This party could use a little livening up," he offered, hand outstretched. The music was some kind of jazz electronic fusion, the beat just right. We moved awkwardly at first, but soon found a rhythm. By the end of the song, I was laughing, breathless, and surprised at how much fun I was having. As the party wrapped up, Lucas leaned in. "Could I see you again? Maybe somewhere less sparkly?" "Sure," I blurted out, surprised at my own boldness. "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers, and he flashed me another heart-stopping smile, before disappearing into the night. Walking home later, under the streetlights with the city quiet around me, I couldn't help but think maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. Since that party, me and Lucas had been pretty much inseparable. It felt like we'd known each other for ages, not just a few months. We'd go out for cheap eats, walk around the park, or just hang at my place, talking till it was way past decent bedtime hours. Lucas had this way of making everything seem interesting. It was a chilly Saturday when he said, "Hey, let's go for a drive." "Sure, where to?" I asked, pulling on my oldest, comfiest sneakers. "It's a surprise. Trust me, you'll like it," he winked, that grin plastered on his face that told me trouble in the best way possible. We drove out of the city, the buildings shrinking behind us. After about an hour, we ended up at this little lookout spot overlooking the river. The sun was just setting, turning the sky all sorts of crazy beautiful colors. Lucas led me to a secluded spot, pulled out a blanket from his car, and we just sat there, watching the light fade. "You know, Lana, these past months with you, they've been the best," he started, his voice more serious than usual. "I love being with you. You make everything better, and I can't imagine not having this, not having you." I didn't know what to say. I mean, I felt it too, but hearing it? That was something else. "Lucas, Before I could finish, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. My heart skipped about a dozen beats. "Lana, will you marry me?" he asked, opening the box to reveal a ring that sparkled even in the fading light. I stared at him, then at the ring, and all I could think was how this wasn't my world. Fancy rings, proposals at sunset, that was stuff for other people, not me. But looking at Lucas, seeing him all nervous and hopeful, I realized that maybe, just maybe, it could be my world too. Yes, Lucas. Of course, yes. I laughed, the sound bubbly and a bit hysterical, even to my own ears. He slid the ring on my finger, and we hugged, the world spinning around us like one of those cheesy movie scenes. But it didn't matter. It was real, it was ours, and it was just the beginning. Or so I thought. When we got back to my place, I called Jack first thing. "Jack, you're not gonna believe this." "What? What's up?" His voice was alert, ready for anything. "Lucas proposed." There was a pause, then. "He what? Holy, are you serious?" "As serious as I can be. I'm getting married, Jack." "Oh, Lana, that's incredible. I'm so happy for you. Lucas is a great guy. You two are gonna be amazing together." "Thanks, Jack. I think so too," I said, a smile so wide my face hurt. We talked a bit more, but I could tell Jack was genuinely stoked for me. It felt good, having my little brother's blessing. It was supposed to be just dinner, but standing at the doorstep of Lucas's parents' house, it felt more like I was gearing up for battle. His mother, Mrs. Aldridge, answered the door with a plastered smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lana, finally we meet," she said, her tone cool. "Lucas has told us so little about you." I tried to smile, brushing off the chill her words left. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Aldridge." "Oh, please, call me Diane," she insisted, but her voice was stiff, formal. The house was immaculate, like something out of a home decor magazine, and it made me self-conscious of every speck of dust I might have carried in. We moved into the living room, where Mr. Aldridge was already seated, looking up from his newspaper with a scrutinizing gaze. "So, you're the girl who's stolen my son's heart," he remarked, not unkindly. I nodded, managing a small "yes, sir," before settling into an armchair Lucas pointed out, feeling it swallow me whole. Diane didn't waste any time. As soon as we were seated, she began her interrogation, her questions sharp and her curiosity seeming more like an investigation. "Lana, Lucas mentioned you grew up locally. Tell me about your family." I cleared my throat, feeling Lucas's tense gaze on me. "Well, it's just been me, my dad, and my younger brother for a long time. My mom passed away when I was young." Diane's eyebrows rose slightly, and she exchanged a quick, unreadable look with her husband. "I see. And without a mother, how did you manage the finer aspects of becoming a lady?" Her question stung, its implication clear, but I kept my composure. "My dad did his best, and I learned to handle things myself. It made me independent, strong." Diane murmured, glancing up as if assessing this information. She then continued, "And your education? Lucas mentioned you didn't go to college?" I nodded, feeling the old familiar pang of inadequacy. "Yes, I went straight into work after high school. I built a career in advertising from the ground up." Diane's smile thinned. "Fascinating. And here I thought Lucas would marry a woman of educational standing." Her tone was polite, but the underlying criticism was palpable. Diane turned to call for a servant. "A glass of water, please." She turned back to me, popping a pill into her mouth as soon as the water was handed to her. I sometimes need a little something to help me digest surprises. The dinner progressed painfully. Each course served was like another round in an unspoken contest I didn't sign up for. Lucas tried to change the topic to lighter subjects, but his attempts fell flat as his father suddenly dropped a bombshell. "Tell me, Lana," Mr. Aldridge said, his voice carrying across the table. "Is there perhaps another reason for this rushed engagement? You aren't expecting, are you?" My face heated up at the blunt question. "No, sir," I replied, my voice a mix of shock and indignation. "It's not like that at all. As dinner wrapped up, I felt defeated, the weight of their judgments pressing down on me. I looked to Lucas for support, but he was preoccupied, his attention more on his phone than the conversation. It hurt, seeing him so detached when I needed him most. The months leading up to the wedding were a blur of appointments, decisions, and constant second-guessing, mostly thanks to Diane. She had a knack for making the simplest choices feel like life or death decisions. Jack was my rock through all of it, always ready to lend an ear or a hand. Jack and I were in the middle of discussing table settings one afternoon when I got a call from her. I put her on speaker so Jack could listen in, a grimace forming on my face as I braced for the onslaught. "Lana, are you sure you want to go with these colors? I mean, they're a bit, well, plain, don't you think?" Diane's voice would always drip with a blend of disdain and false concern. "Diane, we thought these colors were neutral, elegant." I tried to defend our choice, but my voice wavered under her scrutinizing tone. "Darling, neutral is just another word for boring. Remember, this wedding isn't just about you, it's about our family too. We have a reputation to uphold," Diane responded sharply. Jack rolled his eyes, mouthing, "Here we go again," as he listened. Frustrated, I suggested, "What about adding some brighter accents? Maybe some red napkins? They could really pop against the white tablecloths." There was a pause on the line. "Red? Are you serious? That's the epitome of tacky, Lana. Red is so garish. It's completely out of the question." Diane shot down the idea instantly. Yet, just a week later, at a meeting with the venue's event coordinator, Diane did a complete 180. "You know what would really stand out? Red napkins, and oh, let's not forget red flower vases for each table," she exclaimed with a flourish, as if it were her idea all along. I sat there, stunned, exchanging a bewildered look with the coordinator who seemed just as confused. Jack, who had tagged along, snickered under his breath. "She's unbelievable. Did you not say last week that red was tacky?" I couldn't help but confront her as politely as I could manage. Diane waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, I meant it's tacky if not done properly. But I trust this lovely lady to handle it with class," she cooed at the coordinator, completely ignoring my input. Later, I vented to Lucas about his mother's contradictory and controlling behavior. "She's driving me insane, Lucas. It's like she's doing this on purpose. Last week, red was tacky, and now it's her brilliant idea?" Lucas sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lana, that's just how they are. They're set in their ways. We can't change them. You know how my mom likes to take charge. Maybe it's easier if we just let her have this one." I was flabbergasted. "Easier for who, Lucas? This is our wedding, not just a party she's throwing." He didn't have an answer for that, just a shrug and a helpless look that said he was as caught in the middle as I felt. The morning of my wedding, the air buzzed with a mixture of excitement and nerves. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the delicate lace of my dress, the fabric falling perfectly just how I'd always imagined. My dad knocked gently on the door, poking his head in. "Ready, Lana?" he asked, his eyes misty. I took a deep breath, smoothing down my dress one last time. "As I'll ever be, Dad." He offered his arm, and I took it, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. We walked together, the sound of our steps mingling with the soft music that filled the air. As we emerged, the sight of friends and family all turned to watch us approach filled me with a warmth I hadn't expected. My dad squeezed my hand as we walked, his presence a calming force. Approaching the altar, my heart skipped a beat, but not just from seeing Lucas waiting there. His mother, Diane, was dressed entirely in black, her outfit more suited to a funeral than a wedding, complete with a large hat covered by a black veil. It was a shock, a stark contrast to the sea of cheerful colors around her. I glanced at Lucas, searching for some sign of reaction, but he stood there, stoic and seemingly oblivious to the absurdity of his mother's attire. We reached the altar, and Dad handed me over to Lucas, with a tearful smile. I hugged him tightly, whispering a thank you that caught in my throat as emotions threatened to spill over. The ceremony proceeded, and it came time for the speeches. I took a deep breath, turning to address the gathering, my hands shaking slightly as I held my notes. "I want to start by thanking my dad," I began, my voice strong, despite the shaking. "Dad, you raised Jack and me on your own, sacrificing so much to give us a life full of love and laughter. You taught us the value of hard work and the importance of sticking together." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and I saw Dad wiping away tears, his chest swelling with pride. "I also want to thank Lucas's parents, Diane and Michael, for raising such a wonderful man," I continued, turning towards them with a respectful nod. "Lucas is kind, intelligent, and caring, qualities that are a direct reflection of both of you." As I spoke these words, Diane's sobbing became louder, her cries theatrical as she lamented, "Today is a day of mourning. I have lost my son to this unworthy woman." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, the tension thick in the air. Lucas, face flushing red, stepped up to speak next, his mother's sobs still echoing around us. "I want to thank my parents for everything," Lucas began, his voice steady, but his eyes avoiding mine. "For your love, your guidance, and your unwavering support." As he continued, I felt a pang of hurt. He didn't mention my dad, not even a nod to his efforts or the bond we shared. Leaning closer, I whispered to Lucas, "You might want to thank my father too. It's only polite." Lucas barely glanced my way. His omission stung, a sharp reminder of the divides between our families, and the support I felt slipping away. A moment later, Diane, clad in her dark attire, rose from her seat with a flourish. The chatter around the room hushed as all eyes turned to her. She cleared her throat dramatically, holding up several sheets of paper. "I have something I must say to the bride," she announced, her voice piercing the tense silence. Everyone, including me, froze. It wasn't customary for the groom's mother to make such a speech, but there she was, stepping forward, a determined look in her eye. "Since meeting Lana," Diane began, her voice thick with emotion, "I have undergone considerable stress. The shock has been so severe that I've incurred expenses for psychological consultations and medication." The crowd murmured, some in sympathy, others in disbelief. She continued, "Therefore, I demand compensation for the emotional damage caused by this union." Diane then produced a document and a sleek pen from her purse, thrusting them towards me. "I require that you, Lana, sign a contract to pay us $7,000 monthly for a year to cover these costs." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I stared at her, my heart pounding, and then turned to Lucas, searching his face for any sign of objection. But instead, he nodded in agreement with his mother. "Lana, you need to respect the new family rules," Lucas stated loudly, enough for everyone to hear. "Please sign the document." I felt like I was in a nightmare, my legs rooted to the spot. Before I could process the humiliation, Jack, who had been a silent spectator until now, stood up and strode towards me. His face was set, his jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous." Jack's voice boomed across the hall. He snatched the document and pen from Diane's hands and tossed them onto a nearby table. "I won't let anyone treat my sister this way." He turned to address the crowd, his voice filled with passion. "Everyone, I thank you for being here on what should have been a joyous occasion. But I cannot stand by and watch as my sister is insulted and demeaned." Jack paused, his gaze sweeping over the guests, then landing on me with softness. "Lana sacrificed her education for me. She worked to ensure I could succeed, and today, I plan to thank her by gifting the newlyweds an apartment and sending my new in-laws on a world trip." The murmurs grew louder, a mix of shock and support bubbling in the room. However, Jack's voice grew stern. "Seeing how they've treated her, I can't allow this marriage to proceed. Lana deserves better." He stepped forward, placing a protective arm around my shoulders. "There will be no wedding today. Please, take your gifts and go home. The apartment and the trip will go to my sister, she deserves a vacation." The room erupted in applause, some guests standing to clap louder. The echoes of applause were still ringing in the hall when Mr. Thompson, the president of the company where my brother worked, stepped up to the altar. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Thompson began, his voice firm and carrying effortlessly. I'm here not just as a spectator but as someone who has seen firsthand the kind of character and dedication Lana has instilled in her brother, Jack. He nodded towards me, a serious look on his face. Turning to my father, he extended his hand, which Dad shook, overwhelmed by the unfolding events. Sir, you've raised a remarkable daughter and a son who stands by his family with unwavering loyalty and integrity. The room filled with another round of subdued applause. Mr. Thompson then turned sharply towards Lucas, who was already looking quite shaken. And now, to you, Lucas. Lucas's face was pale, his eyes darting nervously. Lucas, I offered you a position in our company at the recommendation of Jack, Mr. Thompson continued, his tone hardening. However, in light of today's revelations and your apparent lack of respect and support for your would-be wife, I must set new rules for our company. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing my offer of employment to you. The room gasped, the weight of his words not lost on anyone, especially not on Lucas, who staggered slightly as if he'd been physically hit. Lucas's mother burst into loud, wailing sobs. This is all your fault, she screamed at me, pointing a trembling finger. You've ruined my son's career. As the guests began to disperse, the atmosphere was thick with a mix of shock and support. Some approached to offer their condolences, others their congratulations for dodging a bullet. Lucas stood off to the side, his figure slumped, the realization of his losses sinking in. Jack, ever the protector, didn't leave my side. Come on, Lana. Let's get you out of here and to your new apartment. You need a fresh start, away from all this drama. When we arrived at the apartment Jack had gifted me, I was taken aback by the modern layout and the comforting ambience. Jack, this is amazing, I murmured, taking in the view from the large living room window. It's all yours, Lana. No strings attached, no unfair compromises. Just a place where you can be yourself and figure out what you want next, Jack said, draping an arm around my shoulders. 3 months had whisked by since the day that should have tied me down, but instead set me free. Here I was, miles away from home, on a journey around the world with Dad and Jack, the very trip Jack intended for those who never deserved it. As our plane cut through the clouds toward our next destination, I couldn't help but feel the vast distance from everything that had tried to confine me. Jack nudged me as I stared out the window. Thinking about how high we are, or just daydreaming about pastries from that Parisian cafe? I laughed, shaking my head. Honestly, just enjoying the distance from all the drama. The conversation drifted to lighter topics, laughter filling the spaces between us. But amidst the casual banter, my thoughts sometimes drifted back to Lucas and his mother. Word had it that Lucas turned into a pariah in the business world, doors slamming shut as his reputation tanked, thanks to his own actions and his mother's antics. And Diane, once a social butterfly, found herself shunned, her schemes and demands at the wedding reaching legendary status among her circles. It was a fitting end to their saga, one might think, but I seldom let my mind linger there. Instead, I focused on the journey. It was on a sandy beach in Thailand, watching the sunset paint the sky with strokes of orange and pink, when I met Alan. He was there with his little daughter, Mia, building a sandcastle near where Dad, Jack, and I were lounging. Mia came bounding over to us with a shell in her hand, offering it to me with a shy smile. This is pretty, thank you. What's your name? I asked her. I'm Mia. That's my daddy. She pointed to Alan, who was now walking towards us, a friendly grin on his face. Hope she's not bothering you, Alan said as he reached us, his voice warm. Not at all, I replied, handing Mia back her shell. We were just admiring her shell collection. Alan sat down with us, and we started chatting. He was from Australia, a widower taking some time to travel the world with his daughter. As days turned into weeks, our paths crossed often, between guided tours and hotel stays. Alan and I found ourselves sharing stories over coffee while Mia and Jack concocted sandcastles and adventures. It was easy, comfortable, and something about him felt like home. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Alan turned to me. Lana, I know this trip is a reset for you, but when we get back, would you want to maybe see where this could go? I looked at him, at the honest hope in his eyes, and felt a surge of warmth. I'd like that, Alan. Let's see where it goes. As the trip neared its end, my heart was full. Not just from the adventures and the break from my past life, but from the possibility of a new beginning. With each country we left behind, I felt less of the old ties that bound me and more of the new connections that beckoned.